It began with a problem, and it was kind of a big one.
There was so much information in the world, and yet it was so difficult to find.
So we tried to solve that problem. But along the way, we found new ones, like how to reply to all those emails. What's the best way to get from A to B? How do I get that look? Or how do I get rid of that? For this,
my computer just crashed.
We built that. From that came this. To stop this, we made that. The more we look, the more we find. Find a problem, build a solution.
The climate crisis.
Our goal is to make the sustainable choice an easier choice.
Whether someone that can't see, can't hear, really making it accessible to as broad a set of people as possible.
Take a selfie.
Okay, get ready.
We know that the starting point is uneven, but we can generate equitable outcomes and give everybody a level playing field.
It can actually just be inspired by the world around us.
Technology has the power to make everyone's lives better. It just has to be built.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today, and welcome to this Google Certified Innovator Program application webinar. My name's Andy Caffrey, and I'm joining you from Google London today, so I'm based in the UK. But thanks and welcome to everyone joining us from around the world. It would be great to find out who is joining us. So if you're watching us live in YouTube, feel free to share in the chat where you're from, your name, if you want to share, your job role, what country you're joining us from, so we can get an idea of who's with us on the call today, watching along live. In that video, we saw a key statement, which is how Google operates: find a problem and build a solution. And the Google Certified Innovator Program is really built off that foundation. And what we are asking people to do on our program is to find problems that they're facing in the world of education, and then to, when we come to the academy, build a solution or help find a solution to that problem. And that's what we're going to focus on as we go through the webinar today. So it's great to see lots of you joining us in the chat. Lots of names I know, people joining us from Ireland, people joining us from the UK, people joining us from Libya, people joining us from South Africa. Welcome to all those people joining us in the chat. And feel free to ask questions as we go along today, both in the chat. And what we're going to focus on in today's webinar is some of our Innovator Academies. And we have 2 academies that are coming up soon. So we're going to mention these 2. And the first one is an in-person academy. And that's taking place at Amsterdam in the Netherlands in November. And that's where you can come along to a Google office and experience the Innovator Program over a 3-day period. But we also have our virtual academy coming back this year. So where you don't need to travel, you can stay where you are based in all those countries you're mentioning in the chat right now, and you can join us online and experience the Innovator Program online. And so we're going to talk about both of these academies today, and both options are available to ensure that this program is accessible to people from all around the world, wherever you're based. So if you've got any big questions, burning questions, whilst the chat is running, we're also running a Q&A doc. It's at bit.ly/VIA-AMS, bit.ly/VIA-AMS. And that QR code on screen will also take you to our Q&A doc. And the Q&A doc can be used if you want to ask any more detailed questions. And although obviously we're live at the moment in the chat, later on I will go back into that doc and answer in detail any questions you've got. So we've got something that will run after the call, or if you're watching at a later point of the webinar, feel free to use that doc, see what's been asked, and ask further questions. That doc is running all the time for people with questions. Before we get into sort of focusing on the application process in this webinar, I want to introduce some existing Google Certified Innovators. So I've invited some of our innovators along to join us today to tell us about their experience of going through the application and then applying to the program and then going through the academy. So we're going to meet some of our innovators. So we'll probably bring them up onto the call. And so lots of different people joining us today. And we'll just wait while they all jump in. And we're going to go around and have them introduce themselves. And it'd be good to hear about your experience at the Academy for each of them. So we'll start with probably our longest serving innovator on the call, who I think is Jess. Hi, Jess.
Hi, everyone. So great to be here. Yeah, I think the first Google Teacher Academies were in 2013 or 2012, yeah, and 2013 for the first ones. And I was at Sweden 13, which even the hashtags and all of that were not a thing then. It was a bit different. It was a whole amazing experience, though, the same as it is now, of a few days of intense learning at a Google office and collaborating, getting connected with others. And I also was a coach for VIA 20, which was really special, it being the first online virtual Innovator Academy. So yeah, really happy to speak about either of those. I would say they're truly the reason why I got introduced to the Google for Education team eventually.
Great, thanks, Jess. And definitely some VIA 20 in the house today joining us on the call, because all of our other 4 innovators on the call have come from a virtual academy. So Jess went to an in-person academy in Sweden, but our other 4 innovators today have come through the virtual academy. So we'll start off with Ted. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ted Samaras. I am from VIA 20, and I live in New Jersey in the United States of America. I was very fortunate to get into the VIA 20. As you remember, there was a little pandemic going on during that time. And so it was great. I loved my experience. I was also a mentor, by the way, for VIA 22 in APAC as well. So even though I know a lot of people are really happy about the in-person coming back, I really did like my virtual time. It was great because I enjoyed the amount of time I had to work on the project, because it was once a week that we would meet with our coaches. So that for me, for my learning, that actually worked out better for my project than it did the 3-day looking back at it. So I really enjoyed that. And one other thing is that it allowed me to meet people that may not have been part of the academy that I would have went to anyway, because it was we based it on time zones in that first one. And so in my group, I was lucky enough to have another colleague from New Jersey, but also one from Dallas, Texas, one from Atlanta, Georgia, and 2 from Brazil. And so the chances of all of us being in the same group, in the same cohort, may not have happened without the virtual. So so looking back on it, yes, it's great to meet everybody face to face, and I've had the opportunity to meet some of those people since. But the virtual academy actually really worked out great for me. Plus, it was a lot cheaper option than some of the other ones, for those of you thinking about it. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Ted. And also joining us from a bit closer to me in the UK is Georgina.
Hey everyone, so great to see everyone in the chat and be in today's lineup. Thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to celebrate VIA 20 today. So I'm currently, as Andy said, just not across the pond, but down the road, let's say. But at the time when I was doing my VIA 20 Academy, I was actually in Jordan in the Middle East. And as Ted mentioned, we were in a little bit of a pandemic, and it was not possible to secure flights from certain countries, etc. So it really meant that accessibility was key for all of us. And also, being a senior leader at a school at that time, it meant that the 6-week program allowed me sufficient time to be able to work on my goals across the program. You can imagine in 3 days, it's intense and whatnot, but it allows you also to process your project. And sometimes people work at different rates with their ideas. And so just having that extra time really helped out. My favorite part, as some of you know in the chat already, being such a creative individual, was our ability to create our own logos. We were sort of tossed in the pond, as it were, all together with no instructions, and we had to figure that out together. So the Google Innovator Academy is really setting the bar about collaborative problem solving, and that you're not alone, and that you're a team, and that we pull together to support each other and leave no person behind. So if you're looking to get different perspectives and lenses on the problems you're solving for in education, this is one of the best professional developments that you'll have the opportunity to do that at. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Georgina. It's been really interesting to hear, because obviously people who go in person to an Innovator Academy, it is an intense 3 days. It is like the whole curriculum, merged into one hit. And obviously on our online academy, we space that out over an 8-week program. So it is thinking perhaps for some of the people on the call about your style of learning, and which would you prefer. Let's chat to some more VIA 20 people who are joining us. So up in Scotland is Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Andy. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm up in, I had to shut the curtains because it's so sunny up in Scotland. I know you're jealous. But yeah, so I was part of VIA 20 as well. It doesn't seem like 4 years. It's been very quick, but I'm sure, Jess, you feel the same about Sweden. But I found it amazing. I mean, it was something that I couldn't have accessed without it being virtual, I think. And the quality of the training and the professional development was second to none. I mean, I raved about it every time I went to work. I love the fact that it was compressed. So I know you were just mentioning that, Andy, that it was quite a lot, but it was spread out over 8 weeks rather than just in a single week, which was nice. It gave me time to sort of think between the sessions, and the coaches that we were assigned to our teams were fantastic, but so were the individuals in those teams. It was almost like they were sort of set up to get the best out of each person in that team. And I think that it really did sort of change, I'm going to say change my life, but it did change the way that I viewed professional development, and it set a very high standard.
Great. Thanks for sharing. That's good to hear, Ian. And last but not least, joining us is Stuart.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stuart. I'm a teacher in the northwest of the UK. I was part of VIA 20. I went from full imposter syndrome in terms of whether I should apply to thoroughly embracing the whole thing. I've spoken to lots of people who've done a 3-day in-person event, but I wouldn't have it any other way than going virtual. I think, as Ian said, the structure of the course and just the intensity in terms of what you learn and how much time you've got for reflection, for example, from week to week, is second to none. I've just actually gone through my emails from that time and reminded myself of a lot of the things that we did. So we had affinity buddies, we had breakouts, we went through the whole design thinking process, we did prototypes with existing innovators, and then we had a great party at the end of it. And, it's just one thing I want to stress enough is, I was a teacher, I was an IT lead, and I felt like I was single-handedly doing our online learning platform for our school, but it's really made me focus on a non-teaching future in terms of looking at, the edtech world and training and stuff like that. So it's not just the impact in terms of whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve, but actually it's the skills and confidence you learn along the way that actually maybe opens a few doors and avenues that you maybe didn't consider before you started the Innovator Academy.
Great. Thanks to all of you for sharing. I know we're going to sort of bounce around and have you come and join us again in a minute. And I probably ought to add that I have also been through the program. And so I went to Mountain View in 2016. So I went to an in-person academy and travelled across the other side of the Atlantic for my academy and went through the process as a teacher at that point in my career. And like a lot of people on the call, it sort of broadened my horizons. I met people outside of my own school and outside of my own network, and it sort of somehow changed my thinking. And even though I had my project and I knew what I was doing, it was that wider broadening piece that sort of led me in the direction that I now do and the work that I now do in my career. So it has been a really transformative piece for me, as well as a lot of other people on the call. We're going to have you guys come and join us in a little bit as we talk through some of the application questions. But for now, thanks. We're going to just dig into a little bit of how do you apply for the Certified Innovator Academy. So we'll see you all shortly, and we'll jump back into the slide deck and talk about what that's going to be like in terms of applying. So we've already talked about this. One of the big choices that you guys watching need to think about is, do you go online or in person? And there's lots of things to think about as you go through that process. Our VIA 24 is an online academy this year, and it's running over 8 weeks. It starts on the 8th of October, so the 8 weeks runs until the 26th of November, and those are Tuesdays. And this year, the timings for the main call, so each week there's a main call, it's 2 hours long. The timings for the main call are as shown on the screen. So depending where you join us in the world, it's 5 p.m. for me in the UK, and 6 p.m. in Europe, and then 7 p.m. in Israel, getting later, 9 p.m. in UAE, and then getting much later into the night across to India. Over in the US, if you're joining us from the US, it's 9 a.m. Pacific time, and then up to midday in Eastern. So for some of our US colleagues, it's going to fall inside the school day this time round. For those of you joining us from the other side of the world, from Asia Pacific, last year we ran one that was time shifted to Asia Pacific, and likely next year we'll swing it again. So if you're thinking, actually, that's terrible time for me this year, I would rather it be in the daytime or another time, have a look next year when we'll shift the time again to make it more accessible for multiple people. So that's our online offering. So you go to 2 hours a week program sessions where we deliver the content, and then you also have 1 hour a week with a coach. Now, the coaches are local to where you live, so it's more often an appropriate time zone to you, and that's arranged with you and your calendar and your coach. So there's no set time for that. You arrange that once the program starts. So we have the VIA 24 as one option this year, or you might choose, well, actually, I want to do it in person and come along to Google. And so our next academy is Amsterdam, so it's Amsterdam 24, AMS 24, and that's running from the 13th to the 15th of November at Google Amsterdam. If you choose this option, you obviously need to be able to get to Google Amsterdam for those dates, and individuals need to fund their own travel and accommodation. So Google will provide all the food from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave. As with all the Google offices, lots of food around, but you'll need to yourself think about the funding of travel and accommodation. Now, obviously, if you're joining us from the Netherlands, this is going to be easy and appropriate for you, but for some of you joining us from other parts of the world, that could be an expensive decision and will factor into which academy you want to apply to. Each year, there are different academies in lots of different locations around the world. Across the whole of this year, we're also running academies in Chicago, in South Korea, and so they do vary around the world to give people the chance if they want that in-person experience. So we have our academy choices for this year. Now let's talk about the process of applying to be a Google Certified Innovator. Because as some of the innovators mentioned earlier, unlike some of our other programs at Google, Trainer and Coach, for Innovator, we can only take a certain number of people on each cohort. We only have a certain size of office in Amsterdam. The room is only so big. And on our online program, we only have a certain number of coaches and people that work with you. So we have a maximum capacity at each academy. And that means it is a competitive application process. And you are applying against other people, and not everybody gets accepted on their first application. And I often share this with lots of people. I applied 3 times. So my first 2 applications to the Innovator Program were rejected. I was rejected from a London academy. I was rejected from one in Australia. And then I was successful for a Mountain View Academy. So if you are unsuccessful, apply again. Think about your application, iterate, change it, and apply again. Okay, so let's talk about the process. So these are the key steps at a big broad level that you need to cover when you apply to become a Google Certified Innovator. You firstly need to become level 2 certified. So we have our Google Certified Educator, level 1 and level 2, and you need to hold a level 2 certification at the point you apply to become an innovator. If your level 2 has expired, you might need to retake your level 2. If you haven't yet done level 2, you'll need to take it before you put your application in. So some of you might need to do level 2 at this point. You don't, interestingly, need to have level 1. So you can just go straight to level 2 and take that exam if you've not done one before. You can jump for Innovator. You can jump straight to level 2. It's the level 2 in specifically we're looking for. You also need to have a challenge that you want to solve that you're facing in the classroom. And we'll talk more about that in detail in a second. Then you're going to record a video. We'll go into that. And you need to fill in the application form by the deadline. So we will go through this as we go through the webinar. It would be great to find out in the chat if anyone is what existing certifications people have got. So if you are joining us watching live on YouTube, feel free to let us know in the chat what you are. Have you got level 1 yet? Have you got level 2? Have we got any Google champions joining us who are trainers or coaches? Or we've got some, I know we've got some existing innovators in the chat as well. So if you are any of those, feel free to let us know what you have in the chat, because it's always interesting to see the range of people out there. But we still have lots of time in the application window for both of these academies. So there is plenty of time for you to go away if you haven't already got it and complete level 1 or level 2. And lots of, seen lots of, Kathy's a level 1 and level 2 and a trainer. Got Stephen's both in a trainer. Lots of level 1 and level 2s in the chat. So that's great to see. I don't know who Google Goddess is, but she's level 1, level 2 trainer and champion. So lots of people joining us with different certifications. So that's great to see. So then when you actually want to apply, we have an online application form. And the online application form saves your application. So you can come back to it. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. And you can get to it from the Google for Education Teach Center or at certifiedinnovators.com. That just takes you straight to the page quickly. And obviously, you start by pressing Apply Now. Then you sign in with your Google account to the platform. And my slides say you should use the same account you took level 2 with, but you actually now can use a different account. So you can actually sign in with any Google account you like. It doesn't have to be your work account. It's entirely your choice. We ask a question now on the form, which email address did you use for your level 2 exam? And then select what you're going to apply for. So VIA 24 or AMS 24, which academy you're applying for. If you want to apply for both, that's fine. You can apply for both. And obviously, when they are announced, you'll have to reject one and accept. You can't go to 2, so you'll have to accept one and reject the other one when they are announced. So that's those. The form starts with some nice and basic questions. Just where are you based? Where do you work? Anyone in the world of education can apply to this academy. So you don't have to be a teacher. You might be working as a network support person. You might be a school leader. You might be working for a company that's involved in education. If your challenge that you're applying with relates to education, then you can apply. So we have no restrictions on this particular area. And then we ask for your address, just to see where they're coming from in terms of attending our academies. And then we get into the form. Just calling back to the chat, I'm always interested, as I said earlier, I applied 3 times. I know some lucky people got in on their first attempt. It would be great to find out, has anyone in the chat applied before? And we might also have some people in the chat who applied this year to some of our earlier academies and were unsuccessful. So we've already announced Chicago, South Korea is currently being scored. So it'd be great to find out in the chat how many times people applied. Were you in on your first attempt? Abid's in the chat and he was in on his first attempt. Congratulations, Abid, on getting in first time. And a few others, it's their first applications. Karen's applying for a first time this year. Fingers crossed for you on that. Techie Kari's applying first time this time round. So great to see people who are first time applying as well in the chat. So then we get into the questions where we ask some questions. The first one is just really a checker that you've thought through the time commitment. So there is time commitment across both of these academies. Obviously, for the in-person, you have to travel and be in Amsterdam. And for the online, you have to be in those online sessions. You have to join the online sessions live, and we expect you to participate in activities. So we're going to use breakout rooms. We're going to ask you to do things on those calls. And so you need to be present and with us. So if you are joining us from the US, where we know that this year VIA is going to fall inside the school day, you need to think about how am I going to get released from my lessons for that period of time if it does fall over your school day. So that question just cross-checks that. And then we ask for the email address you took your level 2 with, because we need to just cross-check that your level 2 is still live. So again, make sure you get your level 2 sorted. We've talked about that. Then we get into the questions, and we start off with an unusual set of questions. And these are questions about your online presence. Now, just to be absolutely clear, these questions are not scored questions. So we don't accept people who have lots of followers on Twitter and not accept people who don't, or lots of followers on LinkedIn or whatever it is you're using for your social media. We simply want to find out about the presence of people and what they're putting out there. So this isn't used to make a decision about who comes to the Innovator Academy. Sometimes when you look at existing innovators, they seem to have a lot of followers. I remember when I applied to become a certified innovator, I don't think I was even very much on social media at the time because I hadn't really explored that as a world away from my job. But once I became an innovator, then I created an account. And then because I was an innovator, I got a lot of followers. So a lot of people, the followers comes after being accepted. So don't be put off by this. It's just to find out whether you're advocating, whether you're sharing content already, to get an idea of who you are. But if you leave some of those blank, if you have no followers, that's absolutely fine. And then we ask about your total reach, just what are you sharing? So that's a question on there. And we also ask you to share what other communities you are part of. Are you an existing trainer? Are you in the Google Champions Community Hub? Are you in other teaching communities in your school? Are you in Facebook groups? Are you running a WhatsApp group with thousands of teachers of your subject? I mean, where is it you get good practice from? Where do you share from? And that is a great question for us finding out a little bit about you and about what you might be like in a community setting. And then we ask about your history of transformation. So what is it you've done in the past that has driven that you think is interesting, is transformative, is about change? The Innovator Program is about taking a problem and finding a solution. But what is it you've done before where you might have solved a problem, even if it's just in your classroom? Maybe you had a particularly challenging group of students in your classroom and you came up with a different way of introducing a topic to them that's made it more engaging for them, that's improved their connection with you as a teacher. That alone would be fine as a history of transformation. So we're not looking for someone who's reinvented some massive thing at a country scale. It could be a very small scale piece of transformation. And we ask you at this point to share a link with us about what you've put. A big tip that I see all the time now is when you apply to Innovator, for every link you put, make sure that people with the link can view. Because we're going to be looking at the application, we don't have access to your Google Drive, so make sure that your links that you're putting here are publicly viewable. So we ask about that question, and we ask you to explain what that is and what you've shown us and how that might be transformative or different for you. And I'm going to actually bring some innovators back on to join me now, because then we get to a question that asks, what new features would you love to see in Google Workspace? And this question is really thinking about your creativity. Can you be creative? Can you find, come up with some ideas of what you think might be coming in Google Workspace? So we're going to bring on back some of our innovators who joined us earlier, because I'm really interested to find out about what they put when they applied, because this question's been on the form for quite a long time. And also whether any of those things have been launched. Now, Google, by the way, don't use this to find new products. This isn't the reason for that question. It isn't like a secret market research question. It's just to think about your creativity. But we'll start with Stuart. What did you put, Stuart, for your answer?
Well, I predicted the future. So I actually asked Google to create an equivalent of WeVideo, and said any kind of Google video type thing would be great, just because I wanted to speed up the process in terms of linking things. And of course, that's what they've just announced. Is it Google Vids is on its way? So
Google Vids is coming, Stuart. So well done on your prediction of the future from your application form in 2020. That was interesting to hear. Ian, can you remember what you put? Or
no, I can't. I was just trying to find my application there because I have no idea what I suggested, but it must have been good enough to get in. So yeah. Any thoughts? I mean, I'm kind of, my head's in the coding space just now. So obviously there's quite a lot of Google coding offers like CS First and things. But my sort of main thing I would get excited about, it would be slightly more coding related Google sites. So you could do a lot more with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I know it used to be like that, the old sites, we won't mention that, but the new sites could have an additional kind of step that would be more suitable for advanced users. That would be really cool.
Yeah, so code bricks within sites is a really interesting adaptation, because sites is getting more and more plugins, isn't it, as we go? Yeah. That's a good idea. Let's go on to Jess. Jess, this might not have been a question when you applied, I don't think. I think you escaped this question. But yes, faced with it today, any ideas of what Google features might be coming soon?
Yeah, I think if I had this, and even now I would always have some Google Classroom request. And there are loads of things, I think, coming to Google Classroom and have been in the past few years. So excited to see what's next.
Great, thanks, Jess. Ted, can you remember what you put for this question?
Mine was related to having more workspace kind of tutorial spaces like whiteboards and stuff in Google Meet. Again, because we were in that time of the pandemic, and I was starting to think more globally, to be able to work with students around the world when we were all stuck in our bedrooms or our living rooms, and then go from there. So just to have more collaborative tools through Google Meet.
And it's also nice to see some people posting in the chat now, some suggestions for new potential Google products. Georgina, can you remember what you put, or what do you think might be coming soon?
I was scrambling just like Ian, get into my Google Drive, get my application prep out, and I found it. And interestingly enough, this is really cool, guys. My feature is all related to AI. And although I didn't share that earlier in the chat, Google Innovator Program actually inspired me to become an entrepreneur, which is what I'm currently building now as an AI edtech product. So I'm really excited to find that that has looped back. But my idea was, basically that G Suite would link to a microchip that was inside a human that could detect metacognition and inform education. And the last sentence was, the challenge will be to teach AI, not to impose. So I think that part is already here, where we're looking at recognition and deep fakes, etc. But yeah, that's really exciting. Thanks for the prompt, Andy. That's great.
No problems. It's always interesting sometimes to look back at what people suggested from cohorts years ago and see whether that actually became a thing or not. And I think there's certainly a lot of people feeling the potential around AI now and the impact that can have. So I'm not saying that everyone should put this, but I'm expecting to see a few AI suggestions as the applications come through. But thanks people sharing in the chat as well about different ideas. But this question is about your creativity. It's about thinking about creativity. Now, while I've got you all on, I'm going to keep you on the screen to talk about the next step in the application form, and that's the challenge that you want to solve. Because of all the different things that sort of makes a difference on your application form, everything so far is useful, it's sort of background information, but the big bulk of the application is around individuals applying with a challenge that they want to solve in education. And the application forms are scored by existing innovators. So some of the people on the call might be scorers. There's a big pool of people who score applications, and they're all the existing innovators who are currently working in schools. So they look at these challenges and they think, which of these challenges do I think, I would like to see solved? So it's the challenge that is the big thing. And if there's one thing you've got to get right on your application when you apply to Innovator, it's the challenge. And the first big rule of applying is don't put solutions. And I will say that again to lots of people. Don't give us any reasons for how you're going to solve it at this point. What we want people to do is come to the Innovator Academy with a problem they want to solve. And at the Academy, we're going to explore lots of options for solving that problem. So we want people with a really open mind at this point who can think about lots of different ways of solving a problem, not just coming in with I've come to the Academy and what I want to do is I want to build a website. That's the solution. You've got a solution there that you solidly fixed around. So don't go near, as Abid has said, don't go near a solution. Keep us focused on the challenge. Be interesting to see what challenges people, our existing innovators, applied with. So we'll go over to Stuart first. Can you remember your original challenge?
Yeah, my original challenge was all about, because obviously we're pandemic related at the time, it was all about trying to support parents teaching their children at home. So, I've taught maths for so many years. I know the maths curriculum inside out. I can teach strategies and methodology, but our parents don't know the modern way of teaching maths. And so my pitch was all about trying to support parents learn how to support their children at home, which obviously was paramount in the pandemic.
And that's a really good example of a challenge because it probably resonates globally. If I went to a teacher in another country, if I went to the US, if I went to South Korea, I think those teachers would also say, yeah, it'd be nice if our parents could understand how that works. So it's a really good example of a challenge that would get a lot of appeal with our innovators because of its global nature. Let's have a look at Georgina. Can you remember your original challenge?
Yeah, also very relatable to the pandemic. I was working in a senior leader role at an international school, and mine was related to helping senior leaders solve the problem for digital strategy. So if you don't have an instructional coach or a tech leader or technology, anything related and leading on ed tech in your school, who is actually supporting the schools get the online learning up and going during the pandemic and supporting both parents and stakeholders. So so my challenge was supporting leaders with that.
Great. And Ted, what was your challenge?
Mine was related to the fact that we had given out so much hardware during the pandemic, and we got everybody a Chromebook and a hotspot, and then what to do now that they had a Chromebook and a hotspot, and also trying to bridge whatever digital divide that they might have based on socioeconomics and those type of things.
And then Ian.
So I was looking at, well, I found my application. So it was making leadership opportunities more accessible for teaching staff, because there was a gap between sort of your sort of normal classroom teacher and then promoted posts. And so it was just helping staff get the experience and the feedback and mentorship before they applied for those promoted posts.
And then Jess applied to Google Teacher Academy. So back in the day, we weren't as big with the challenges back in Teacher Academy days. I don't know. I think you came away from the academy with a challenge, didn't you?
We did. We had, still had a project, not quite the same format, and all the design thinking process that you get to go through in the academies, which is really valuable for lifelong learning. But I was a librarian at the time in a school in Italy, and so my central thinking was very much around literacy. And so my project was actually something I still kind of iterated and developed over time, and still remains close to my heart. AI literacy now is, the new thing is added on to that.
Great, thanks. So everyone watching on the call, you need to think really carefully about what your challenge is, and think about that. How is it going to resonate with other people that read it? Innovators, thanks. I might see you in a little bit, but for now, we're going to jump back over to the application form and talk about some more of the questions. So we'll pop the slides back in. And as we said, the first step then is this sort of defining the challenge that you want to solve at the academy. And we've talked through that a bit already. And so we ask a question to describe the challenge you're experiencing in education and why it matters to you. When you are filling in this question, think carefully about the language you're using and try to avoid any localized terms that might not be understood by a global audience. So I'll give you an example of that. Here I'm based in the UK, and we often talk about SLT. And by SLT, we mean school leaders, might be called administrators in the US, but that's quite localized. And if you don't know what that means, it means your challenge is not accessible globally. So when you are using terminology like that, explain what it means. Imagine someone's reading it that hasn't got the experience of the terminology that you use. So make sure you globalize your application in that way. And then we want you to go and talk to someone, interview somebody who is impacted by your challenge and understand the problem from their perspective. This is particularly relevant where your challenge is about a different sort of person. So if you're coming at this from, maybe you're saying that there's a group of students who are struggling to engage in maths, go and talk to a student who is struggling to engage in maths to see the problem from their perspective. So we want you to do a little bit of sort of research before, when you're applying, to think about the problem from someone else's viewpoint and see if you can understand the problem, because we need to get to the crux of what a problem is. I used to be a geography teacher, and I often talk about sort of digging into a problem, a bit like when we zoom in on Google Maps. I can look at the map from a big scale, but sometimes I want to zoom right in to try and work out what the problem is. And that's what we're asking you to do in the application form. We're asking you to focus in on the problem to try and get to the bottom of what that is. So you've got to explain, interview someone, and then from what you interviewed them, one key insight about your challenge that you learned from talking to them. So what did you learn from having that conversation? What is it that they think the issue is in terms of the challenge that you're trying to solve? And then we ask you to frame this in a point of view statement. So that is to turn this into a single statement that allows us to use language that focuses on the key issues they might be facing. So the example we give here is Jose is a busy teacher who wants to eat healthier, but doesn't like to feel like he's on a diet. So we've said who he is, we've related to who that person is, we've said what the challenge is, in this case he wants to eat healthier, and we've given a feeling that they've got about that challenge using that sentence structure. And that's a really useful way of framing a challenge to enable us to explore what some of the possible options could be. As I've said before, any challenge is acceptable that relates to the world of education. And that doesn't mean the challenge has to relate to technology. You don't have to apply with, I'd like my teachers to use Google Workspace. And in fact, those challenges are often not the most successful when we look at our applications. It could be anything. So we've had challenges in the past that relate to the use of gardening as a subject within schools. We've had challenges around healthy eating and food and cooking as a challenge within schools. As long as the challenge relates to the world of education, then it's an acceptable challenge for the Innovator Academy. So you turn that into a statement, and then we finally ask you to create a how might we question. And a how might we question is just a way of summarizing where you got to with this research and this challenge. So in the example we just used, how might we make healthy eating more convenient for adults? So in this case, how might we, and then you insert the problem, and then you talk about the insight that you learned from speaking to that person. So you finish the question, how might we? And this is really the reason why we have so many questions around this challenge, is we want people to really try and zoom in on this challenge and think about what is it that's underlying that problem. And a problem like my teachers haven't got enough time isn't the problem in itself. Having time, lack of time isn't the problem. It's, well, what are they doing with the time? What is it they're trying to achieve, and how can they achieve that better? And as I said before, avoiding all solutions. So what we're not saying here is, and I'm going to build a healthy eating snack, or I'm going to offer a different menu of food choices in the school canteen. At this point, we're just focusing on the problem. So we then come to the video. So I'm going to ask our innovators to join us again and talk through a little bit with the rest of our innovators on the call about the video, because I think this is the bit that makes people the most nervous about applying for the Academy, which is how much time do you spend and how do you create the video that you need to present. So just to run through the requirements first, it's a 90-second video. The first 30 seconds introducing yourself. Hi, my name's Andy. I'm a teacher in a school. Tell us about yourself. And then 60 seconds to explain the challenge to us. Talk about the challenge to us. And you can use your how might we statement in that if you want to, or you can just explain it in other ways. It's your choice. So we'll pop the slides off and we'll talk to our three innovators joining us just about the video piece. I know some of you have helped score, so you've seen some other videos, and lots of people look on YouTube where there are lots and lots of application videos for Innovator as a source of experience. But just we'll start with Georgina. How did you go about making your video?
Yeah, really good question. My favorite part of the application for sure is getting creative. So I think it's a really great opportunity to bring yourself to the table, as in like your real authentic self. It's a way for you to showcase to the Innovator program, who are you in the field of education, and what are you all about? So I found some googly colored balls that I hung from my ceiling, and I broke down. Yeah, it was quite googly, and everybody's video is different. So I know we're going to hear from Ted and Stuart soon. It may not have had hanging googly balls, that's for sure, but it definitely had my style because I'm very, animated, let's say, on video. So I broke down my video into sections and really talked about like what is important to me in education, what am I really passionate about, why that's important with the problem that I'm solving. So you're really telling a story. And as Andy said in the requirements, you don't have much time to tell that story. So my tips for everybody who's getting ready to do their video, you don't have to have full video animation training background in order to create a video. Just bring how you normally would bring yourself to the table, write it on a Google Doc ahead so that you sort of know what you want to talk about, and then bring it. Yeah, that's my tips.
Yeah, and just to probably add on to that, there isn't a section where we look at video production. Okay, so we're not applying to the Video Producers Innovator Academy. We're applying to solve a challenge in education. So the underlying piece needs to be you getting your challenge message across. So if that's recorded on a mobile phone with you walking down the street, if that's in Georgina's case with hanging googly balls around in your house, it's entirely up to you how you want to do that. But it isn't about producing the slickest, most professional looking video in the world. That isn't going to necessarily help. If the challenge isn't great, that's going to go against you far more than a video production piece. Stuart, can you remember your video?
Yeah, I was the opposite to Georgina. It's the bit I hated the most. And all I'll say to anybody is don't obsess over it. Do not edit it multi-thousands of times and get to the point where you hate the editing process. Just organize it, plan it, and try to break it down in parts, and then just try to record it as quickly in terms of not repeating yourself. My little thing, I didn't have any hanging balls, but I did have a chalkboard. Happens to be in our kitchen, so I use that. I cringe when I look at it now, but it's really the message that's most important rather than the production. But yeah, it was an experience. I'm glad I did it, but it was hard work, and I think you've just got to try not to worry about it too much.
Great. And Ted, can you remember your video production?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. And I kind of fall in between both of them. I would definitely agree with Georgina about being your authentic self. You know, this is your academy, whichever academy you get into, whether it's one of these or down the road, right? It really is, you know, they talk about that, you know, you find your people, you find your academy. So be yourself, be true to yourself when you're doing the video. So that this way, you know, you fit in where you're going to get in. I did have a couple of broken Chromebooks lying around, so those are my googly ball prompts. So that helped. One other tip I might tell you, I'm not comfortable all the time being having my face on camera the whole time. So what you may want to do is you may want to break up when you're doing your work in sections, so that this way maybe you have some other slides or something running through and you're able to do voiceover. So out of that, you know, time period, maybe you're actually only on the screen for like a third of it, and then you're speaking to other things. And that might ease a little bit of that imposter syndrome that was referenced before.
Great, thanks. These are all great tips. We probably might see you again on the call, but thank you both, Georgina, Stuart and Ted, for joining us today. And also that they're not up on the screen right now, but thanks to Jess and Ian as well for joining us. We're going to carry on talking about the application, but for now, existing innovators, see you later and to take care. Just as I said, we have got lots of videos on YouTube and on our Innovator Program YouTube channel. We actually keep playlists of each academy from the videos that were successful for that academy. So if you want to get some ideas, some inspiration, go and check out those videos on the channels. On those channels, you can sort of see examples of different ways of presenting it. So people on screen, people not on screen, people just talking. It's sort of your choice. Get this question a lot, which is what happens if my video is more than 9 seconds. We don't watch anything past the 90-second mark. So if you apply with a 3-minute video, that's great. We're only going to look at the first 9 seconds and we're going to stop watching, because that's how we keep it concise. We want people to be able to just get their project, their passion for their challenge over in that amount of time. So check out the YouTube channel if you want to see some examples of videos. Finally, today, we're going to sort of wrap on questions. People have been putting questions both in the chat, and I want to say a big thank you as well over in our chat. Hi to Lewis is in our chat, Abid's in our chat. So lots of questions have been answered as we've gone along today by our innovators joining us over on YouTube chat. So a big thank you from me to them. But we're also running the Q&A doc, which will keep running after the call. So if you want to drop in at a later point, the QR code is on the screen. We've only got, I think, a couple of questions in there. The first one is just from our existing innovators, that you can always reach out for support. So lots of innovators will happily offer their support people. If you're thinking of applying, but you want to run your challenge past someone, you want to chat about a video, reach out across our community. We often use the hashtag Google EI, which stands for Google, and the E is for education and the I is for innovator. So Google EI on social media. So use that to find some of our existing community and reach out to them. They're a fairly supportive group of people, and they will often help you with your application. So that's on our Q&A doc. Second one is, do we know how many people will be accepted into both academies? We don't give specific numbers for the academies at this point because there are lots of variables when it comes to selecting the academy. Some of the variables are the size of the room in Amsterdam, and other variables with our online are about the locations of innovators. We want to create coaching groups in specific locations, so we want our numbers to balance at sort of regional level. So there are lots of variables when it comes to accepting. So there's no, at this point, I have no set number, but as I said, it is a competitive process. And so you are more than welcome. Someone who asked that question talked about applying to both. You are more than welcome to apply for more than one academy. It's just that you can only attend one, so you'll have to make a pick if you get through on both. So that's that question answered from Liz. Does it matter if we apply later on? No, we don't score the applications until after the deadline. So we don't go near the application forms until the deadline. There is no bonus for applying first. In fact, we don't even know when we come to score at what point you chose to apply. And I'll be very truthful, the successful application that I had was done about 15 minutes before the deadline night at about 1:45 when I stayed up late to get my application in. So sometimes working under pressure works for people, and a lot of people leave it to the last day. But try and get your ideas in. If you need to do level 2, get that in advance. Think about your video, get that recorded early on. So got that. So that's that question answered. Do we have to confirm when we get accepted that we are participating? So when we accept the cohort, we send out an RSVP form, and we give you about a month to actually get things in place to work out, can I get the time off school? Can I travel in the case of the in-person to that academy? So there's a sort of a 1 month window where we've accepted some people and we ask them to reply and we ask them to confirm they're definitely coming. If at that point someone drops out, we sometimes go back to our list and go to the next person and move people up. So you can get moved into an academy in that window. But then once we get everyone, the right number of people, and they're all confirmed, we lock everything in and we move to the academy state. So there is a period of time. We're not saying when you apply that you're definite. You have some time to think about that. So I hope that answers that question. People are still typing on my document. So is it possible to get accepted in the virtual one and rejected in the in-person? It's possible for either to happen. Because of the way we balance it in different ways, in different regions, it is possible that 2 identical applications would be accepted on one and not on another, because obviously you're going up against different people. So where you score in that list is going to vary. So it is perfectly possible for something to accept it on one and not on another. At the same time, when I went through my process, and mine were 3 distinct separate time zones, I applied for one, was rejected, and applied again. Each time I iterated, I changed, and I improved my application. And my successful application, I reached out to some other people and got some advice on sort of how to make it better, so I was accepted. So definitely think about that as a way forward. Hope that answers that question. Do we wait for both answers before we choose? The windows overlap, I think, on these 2 academies, but we will communicate with anyone we think might be in the position for both. So we will let you know if that happens. I think that means I have answered all the... So, there's a question in the chat as well, which is, will we find out either way? If we get in, you will find out either way. We have some emails which say you were accepted, and we have some emails which say, unfortunately, on this occasion, you weren't. So you do get an email, and it comes from info@certifiedinnovators.com. And this is not deliberate, but quite a period of time, those emails go to spam. So always after the deadline, check your spam folder as well. Normally around 2 to 3 weeks after applications close before we make a decision on the cohort. Obviously, there's a scoring process and a decision process. So 2 to 3 weeks after cohort close is normally about when you'll get a decision. I hope you found today useful. On behalf of me, a massive good luck to everybody in applying for the Academy. I would love to see lots of people in the chat come and join us, either in person in Amsterdam or online. But if that doesn't work for you this time, then please apply again next year. I said it earlier, but a big thank you to the innovators for joining us. I will stay around in that Q&A doc and answer more questions as we go. If you're watching not in real time, feel free to drop into the doc. But for now, thank you for joining us, and good luck and fingers crossed for all of you for your innovator applications this year. See you all soon. Bye, everyone.